Apple just paid $1 billion a year to admit they can't build what they promised. And the company they're paying? Their oldest rival. This isn't a rumor anymore. Apple and Google have entered a multi-year partnership that changes everything about how your iPhone thinks. Starting soon, Google Gemini will become the foundation model powering Apple Intelligence and Siri. Not an option, not a feature. The foundation. Apple hasn't disclosed the exact terms, but industry estimates put this at roughly $1 billion per year. Multiple years. Committed. Think about what that means. Apple, the company that spent a decade telling you privacy is a human right, is now outsourcing the brain of your device to the company that built its empire on data collection. So, what actually happened here? And more importantly, what happens next? Let's rewind. About 2 years ago, Apple unveiled Apple Intelligence with bold promises. They positioned it as a competitor to ChatGPT, to Gemini, to everything flooding the AI space. The pitch was simple: AI that lives on your device. Private, secure, seamless. But here's what actually happened. Apple Intelligence became something people forgot they had. It wasn't terrible at small tasks, summarizing notifications, cleaning up photos, basic stuff. But it failed at the thing that matters: being an AI people actually talk to. Nobody opens Siri expecting a conversation. Nobody trusts it with complex questions. And Apple knew this. That's why they partnered with ChatGPT early on, letting Siri hand off queries it couldn't handle. But even that integration felt clunky. You'd ask Siri something, it would fail, then boot you out to ChatGPT like it was passing you to a supervisor. The problem wasn't just technical, it was psychological. Apple couldn't get people to believe Siri was smart. And after years of frustration, that trust was gone. So if Apple already had a ChatGPT integration, why switch to Google? 3 reasons. First, infrastructure. Google has been running consumer-facing AI at scale for over 2 decades. Search alone processes billions of queries daily. They've proven they can handle the load without breaking. Second, iteration speed. Google's AI team ship updates constantly. Gemini evolves faster than almost any competing model. Apple needed a partner that wouldn't fall behind 6 months after signing the deal. Third, and this is the one people overlook, control. OpenAI is backed by Microsoft. That's Apple's other major rival. Giving Microsoft adjacent tech this much influence over the iPhone ecosystem? Not happening. Google was the safer enemy. They already power Safari's default search. This partnership just deepens an existing relationship. But here's the part that makes this uncomfortable. Google now sits inside the most personal device on the planet. Apple is making a very specific promise right now. They say your privacy won't change. Here's the technical breakdown. Apple will still control on-device AI, the user interface, and something called private cloud compute. That means simple tasks stay local. Your data doesn't leave your phone for basic requests. But when Siri needs deeper reasoning, when it needs to understand context or answer complex questions, it routes through Gemini's foundation model. Apple is framing this as a customized version of Gemini running inside Apple's infrastructure, not the public Gemini app. A version built specifically for iOS, trained to respect Apple's privacy protocols. But let's be honest about what's really happening here. Google isn't doing this out of kindness. They're doing this because even anonymized interaction data at Apple's scale is valuable. Trend data, usage patterns, behavioral insights. Apple can promise they won't share personal information, but Google will still learn how billions of people interact with AI, and that data feeds back into improving Gemini, which then improves Google's own products. This isn't a partnership, it's a trade. Apple gets better AI. Google gets access to the world's most valuable hardware ecosystem. So where does this leave ChatGPT? For now, nothing changes. Apple says the ChatGPT integration remains available for advanced reasoning queries and world knowledge questions. But there's a future being hinted at here. Apple might go platform agnostic. Depending on the query, Siri could route you to ChatGPT, Gemini, or another model entirely. The goal seems to be best tool for the job, invisibly selected. That sounds convenient, but it also means you never really know which AI is listening, which company is processing your question, which privacy policy applies in that moment. It's AI as a black box. Let's talk about winners and losers. Apple wins by shipping a dramatically better AI experience. If this works, Siri stops being a joke. It becomes something people might actually use daily. That keeps iPhone users locked into the ecosystem. Google wins even bigger They now power AI for the majority of smartphones in the United States. Android runs Google. iPhone runs Google. That's not just market dominance, that's infrastructure control. And even if Apple blocks personal data sharing, Google still benefits. More users means more interaction data, more edge cases, more ways to train and refine Gemini. Every Siri query helps Google build a smarter product, a product that competes with Apple. OpenAI loses mindshare. They had early momentum with the ChatGPT integration, but this Gemini deal will eventually overshadow it. And users, we get better AI, but we also get less clarity about who controls the tools we rely on. This partnership is part of a bigger shift happening at Apple right now. Earlier this week, they announced the Apple Card is moving from Goldman Sachs to Chase, a major financial partnership handed to a completely different bank. They're preparing to launch a foldable iPhone later this year, a product category Samsung has been refining for 7 years. Apple is late again, and now this, outsourcing the intelligence layer of iOS to Google. Apple used to be the company that built everything in-house. Hardware, software, services, control was the brand, but lately they've been admitting they can't do it all, and when they can't build it, they buy it, or in this case, rent it. Some people see this as pragmatism, others see it as the beginning of a slow decline. The truth is probably somewhere in between. So what actually changes over the next few years? First, Siri becomes useful. If Google delivers, you'll start seeing Siri handle multi-step queries, contextual follow-ups, and real conversations. It won't feel like talking to a robotic assistant anymore. Second, AI becomes invisible. You won't know which model is answering your questions. You'll just ask and something smart will respond. That's convenient, but it also removes transparency. Third, the AI wars move to infrastructure. The race isn't about who has the best chatbot anymore, it's about who controls the pipes, the servers, the processing power. Google is winning that race. And fourth, expect more partnerships like this. Meta might partner with Anthropic. Samsung might go deeper with its own AI. The era of companies building everything themselves is ending. What we're entering is an era of strategic dependencies. Here's the part most coverage won't say out loud. This deal proves that Apple's AI strategy failed. Not partially, completely. They had years to build something competitive. They had the resources, the talent, the ecosystem, and they couldn't do it. Now they're paying $1 billion a year to cover that failure. And the company they're paying isn't just any competitor. It's the one company that knows more about how people search, browse, and think than anyone else on the planet. Apple is handing Google the keys to understand iPhone users at a level they've never had before. That might make Siri better, but it also makes Google stronger. And once you're dependent on someone else's intelligence layer, it's very hard to take it back. Apple wasn't first to AI, they won't be first to folding phones, but historically they've been the best at making technology feel effortless. The question now is whether they can stay the best when they no longer control what makes their devices smart. If you want to understand future tech before it rewrites the rules, subscribe to Tech Fleet. We break down what's coming next, not just what's trending now.